Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Historical History featuring Mad Matt. I would like to thank you for tuning in tonight, and as we are about to talk about Bjorn Ironsides. And now I know that a lot of you who listen to this show watch Vikings, and that's super dope because it's a super dope show. But I'm about to unveil what actually happened during the tale of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons. Tonight we are featured with some chunky monkey, which means that I've been drinking banana rum with chocolate liqueur all night long, and we are feeling quite right. Heyo! So, tonight I'm very excited about the subject that we're going to talk about, mostly because the Viking lore is something that I find near and dear to my heart, and I really enjoy talking about these subjects. So if I go out on a tangent, I apologize. So, to start things off, let's go ahead and say that one of my favorite historical figures is Bjorn Ironsides, mostly because he was like one of the most quintessential Vikings that had ever existed. He was the pillager, he was the raider, he was the dude who went out there. Like when you if you were to personify the word Viking, Bjorn Ironside was that dude. So Bjorn was one of the most baddest ass humans who ever traversed the planet. He was a revered chieftain and a naval commander, and his mentor and his father's closest friend. Hostine conducted many primarily successful raids in France, Italy, England, and in the Mediterranean, in the spirit of the traditions initiated by his legendary father, Ragnar Lothbrok. After raiding down the Iberian coast and fighting their way through Gibraltar, Bjorn and Hostine pillaged the south of France, where his fleet was overwintered, before landing in Italy, where they pillaged, where they captured the coastal city of Pisa. They proceeded inland to the town of Luni, which they believed to be Rome at the time, but were unable to breach the town walls. To gain entry, a tricky plan was devised. So, sidebar, this is season 3 of Vikings, where they're trying to get into France with Rollo, who was actually born 1 year after Bjorn died. So, they're taking some liberties, but it's a good story. You should still watch the show. It's amazing, right? Essentially what happened is they sent messengers to the bishop to say that, being deathly ill, he had a deathbed conversation, or a deathbed conversion rather. I'm sorry, I can't read my own writing, and wished to receive Christian sacraments and or be buried on consecrated ground within their church. He was brought into the chapel with a small honor guard, then surprised the dismayed clerics by leaping from his stretcher. The Viking party then hacked its way to the town gates, which were promptly opened, letting the rest of the army in. Flush with this victory and others around the Mediterranean, including in Sicily and North Africa, Bjorn returned to the Straits of Gibraltar only to find his ships from the Al-Andalus waiting for him. In a desperate fight that followed, Bjorn lost 40 ships, largely to a form of Greek fire launched from Andalusian ships. The remainder of his fleet managed to return to Scandinavia, where he lived his life out as a rich man. So essentially, they conquered the shit out of the Mediterranean. And when they tried to play the Greeks, they launched their basic fire. It's those oil-ridden balls that just burned, and it's like prehistoric napalm. They just burn the shit out of the ship. So as soon as these balls hit, you just can't put out those fires. And these small ships went down. So 40 of these ships goes down. They're just like, fuck this, and bounce. The tale of Ragnar's sons tell that he was the son of a Scandinavian king, Ragnar Lothbrok, and Aslog, whom some called Randalin, and that he and his brothers Hivitsirk, Uba, Ivar the Boneless, Halfdar Ragnarson, and Sigurd the Snake Eye, and half-brothers Fridelf, Eric, and Agnar. Bjorn and his brothers left Sweden to conquer Zealand, Gotland, Åland, and minor islands. They then settled in the Ligeri in Zealand, Denmark, and Ivar the Boneless was their leader. So the show shows Ivar as the youngest brother, but he's actually the oldest and the most cunning. He is the military commander of the Vikings, and Bjorn is his fucking ace in the hole. He's his main domo. He's the guy that goes out and slaughters. He's a berserker. And so just to break off in a story for real quick, berserkers are mainly dismayed as these guys who would jump off ships with axes and just fuck shit up. But the true story of the berserkers were that they were these psychotic giant dudes who would jump off the boat butt naked, covered in blood, and they would just fucking hack shit through so that the shield wall guys could jump off the boat and form the defensive strategy. Those guys would then keep killing the fuck out of folks as the armies would march up in the shield wall. So the berserkers in the Viking armies were baddest of the badass, right? This led to a little bit of a problem, because Ragnar was the king. He was the guy who was supposed to rule the whole world. He was the most ambitious guy who had ever lived. And he just couldn't get past the fact that his sons were growing to be more famous than him. And it irked him. It bothered him to his core. How are my sons outliving my legacy? I'm supposed to be the king of kings, right? And so Ragnar, with all the great things that he did, and we'll get into that eventually in another episode, basically says, you know what? Fuck the bullshit. I'm not down with this. And he was jealous of his son's success, and set Eystein Bailey as the Jarl of Sweden, telling him to protect Sweden from his sons. He then went across the Baltic Sea to pillage and show his own skills. It's basically like, bro, hold my base. I'm about to go show these young bucks how it's done, right? Like, homie, watch my shit. I'm going to show these guys what it takes, right? I gotta say, the nepotism in this guy is amazing, because he's just like, yeah, they're my sons, but my success is my own success. Ragnar's sons, Eric and Agnar, then sailed into Lake Merlin and sent a message to the King Einstein that they wanted him to submit to Ragnar's sons. Eric said that he wanted Einstein's daughter, Borghild, as his wife. Ironside said that he first wanted to consult with the Swedish chieftains. The chieftains then said no, fuck no, and ordered an attack on the rebellious sons. A battle ensued, and Eric and Agnar were overwhelmed by the Swedish forces, whereupon Agnar died and Eric was taken prisoner. Einstein then offered Eric as much of Uppsala Odd as he wanted, and Borghild in Wergold for Agnar. Eric proclaimed that after such a defeat he wanted nothing but to choose the day of his own death. Eric asked to be impaled on spears that raised him above the dead, and his wish was granted. So instead of just being like, yeah, I'll take some land. I'll be a jarl here. I'll rule some shit. He's just basically like, you know what, man? I got my ass kicked so bad. I choose death. I want to choose when I die and how I die. And he chose like the most fucking... It's like, I choose to eat a bathtub of baked beans. I choose to cut off my own head. He chose to be impaled by spears and then lifted up above the dead and just fucking die. Which is what I would consider one of the most manly deaths I've ever heard of. It's gross. So, in the gist of things, it's not the most concrete information that I have, but here's what I've got. In Zealand, Bjorn Aslag and Hivisterk, who had been playing Taffel, became upset and sailed to Sweden with a large army. Aslag, calling herself Rondalin, rode with the cavalry across the land. In a great battle, they killed Einstein. So the mom was basically like, you killed my boys, you killed his sons. They're not even my boys. You know what, though? Fuck the bullshit. We taken over. They NWO'd Sweden, right? Or Sweden. I'm drunk. Don't listen to me. Do listen to me. Keep listening to the show. Ragnar, not happy that his sons had taken revenge without his help, basically he just wanted to be included like, bros, you took revenge, but you didn't ask me? What the fuck? He decided to conquer England with only 2 Nars. King Alla of Northumbria defeated Ragnar and threw him into a pit of snakes where he died. Essentially, he beat his ass, tortured him, and threw him into a pit of poisonous snakes. Venomous? I guess they're venomous. And they bit his ass until he died. Bjorn and his brothers attacked Alla, but were beaten back. As Ivar did not overcome Ella, he sought reconciliation. He only asked for as much land as he could cover with an ox's hide and swore never to wage war against Ayala. Then Ivar cut the ox's hide into such fine strands that he could envelop a large fortress. In an older saga, it was York, and according to the younger saga, it was London, which he could take as his own. Ivar made himself popular in England and asked his brothers to attack again. During the battle, Ivar sided with his brothers, and so did many of the English chieftains with their people, in loyalty to Ivar. Ayala was taken captive in revenge and carved a blood eagle upon him. The story of Bjorn is to tell the story of the sons of Ragnar, and to tell that story you must discuss the oldest brother Ivar. Ivar, after making an agreement with the king Ayala, pulled a fast one and made sure that he could establish a fort that would become York. He then made good with the locals, earning the fealty of many English lords and locals. With this loyalty, he gained a foothold in England and brought his brothers to bring the thunder. They opened a can of massive whoop-ass on King Ayala. They beat his ass to the ground and decided that the only punishment that could avenge their father was the Blood Eagle. The Blood Eagle is when basically you have this dude put his hands upon like these deer antler thrones and take the knee, right? Then you make a slit along the spine. The skin is then spread away from the ribs, and the ribs are hacked away from the spine. The lungs are then removed and placed upon the victim's shoulders, making the image of the folded wings of an eagle. If the victim screams or cries out in pain during any portion of the Blood Eagle, they are denied entry to Valhalla. In this, the brother, including Bjorn, believed they avenged their father. So basically, they laid upon this dude the most savage execution they could possibly imagine. It is like the raison d'etre of executions. It is like the one execution, what are you going to behead me? No, we're going to Blood Eagle you. No, I choose something else. I choose to have my dick removed by toenail clippers. Like, whatever is the opposite of what the fuck you're about to do to me, right? It is the most savage and brutal execution that could ever befall another human being. And they did it to this dude in front of his people and in front of anybody who was loyal, and they all witnessed and watched this guy get blood-eagled to avenge Ragnar Lothbrok, a guy who wasn't even that cool to them, right? But he was their pappy, he was their father, so you gotta avenge the father. Later, Bjorn and his brothers pillaged in England, Wales, France, and Italy, until they came upon the town of Luna in Italy. When they came back to Scandinavia, they divided the kingdom so that Bjorn Ironside took Uppsala and Sweden. Bjorn died a rich man and the king of Sweden, where his son Eric Bjornsson became the king and ruled through the end of the 10th century. Not him, but his progeny. And they developed what is called the House of Mon-Sol. It's the dynasty of Mon-Sol. And the Mon-Sol dynasty also became the rulers of Denmark. Essentially, they took over Denmark as well. Later in life, there was an uprising and a revolution, a civil war that ended up removing them from power. But it wasn't until much after Bjorn Ironside existed. This is the story of Bjorn Ironside and his part in the tale of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons. I would like to very much thank you for listening to Historical History, and I would like to say that there are very more episodes to come, and I look forward to bringing them to you. This has been Historical History with Mad Matt, and I bid you a very good night.